Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today, I'm joined with Vanessa Rae, who's the owner of the Divine Body Align. Vanessa, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Dan. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So, Vanessa's one of the people that I met when we shared a virtual stage together for Wendy Corner's Your Words Have Power event back in October. And, when she spoke, it just really resonated with me, just like my previous guest Rosa, who I had on the show, just a show before this. So I wanted to have her on to just share some more of the light that she's bringing into the world, and what she's all about. Because again, her message really resonated with me as I was kind of sitting there waiting to get on stage myself. So again, Vanessa, really looking forward to this conversation. But before we get started, just introduce yourself in your own words. Who is Vanessa today?
Yeah, I love that. I love that you said, "Who is Vanessa today?" because I really do think that's the part that matters. So one of the ways that are most important for me of how I think of myself and the meaning in my life is I'm a mom. I love being a mom. I have one daughter, Violet, and a lot of my life has to do with connecting with her, being the best mom I can be to her. She's 11 and a half. So that's a big focus in my life. Um, I'm also very much, I think of myself as a Renaissance woman in that I have multi-passionate. And when I'm doing that thing, I'm so involved in it and so into it. And and it's like a whole world. And then I have a couple of those things. So one thing that I do, I've been passionate about self-development, spirituality, for a very long time before the term life coach was like a thing. Um, but always interested in that self-reflection, um, the personal meaning making my life a sacred practice, um, as really serves and inspires me. So that's a big part of who I am and what I do and what I love to do and plan to do for the rest of my life is that kind of spiritual personal development work. That has turned into coaching over the last 8 years, particularly in the realm of helping women and girls with their confidence, with their experience in their body, that kind of embodiment, that tugs near and dear to my heart, and we'll possibly get into more of that later. Um, I'm also very much an artist and love sing, love to use my voice creatively. Have done so professionally for many years, off and on. Um, and a big proponent of voice literally as a singer, but also the symbolism of our voice, less literal, but more as like, who are we being? How are we showing up? What do we have to say? What do we have to give? How do we contribute? What is the voice of our being here? Um, so I think those things really encapsulate a lot of who I am, and what I'm about. I'm also currently in school right now to become a labor and delivery nurse, potentially a neonatal nurse. I'm very, very into babies and mamas and helping and healing. And so part of what I do when I'm not doing stuff like this is cramming my chemistry and like my other studies so that in a couple of years I'll be nursing.
Yeah, I love that, man. So much to unpack there, and I love the fact that you said about how you have all these different pieces. And I think society always wants to put us in a box, because before Sandy and I started traveling full time in RV, I worked in a youth sports nonprofit organization for 30 years, and everybody kind of said, well, this is Dan, this is the baseball guy, this is the sports guy, but I
Right.
was so much more complex than that. And it's really strange to me how people think that as complex as the human spirit is, that they want to put us in the box as to this is this guy, So it was like, well, this is Vanessa, the singer. Well, no, Vanessa's
Right.
more than just a singer. She's a mom and she's all these other things. She's a coach. So, you know, it frustrated me beyond belief. Yeah, because
Absolutely.
I love music and I love traveling, I love hiking, I love all this stuff. But yet everybody was like, "Oh, this is the guy. He's the baseball coach." So for you, like, how did you? I mean, because I embraced the complexity of what I was very easily, but
Yeah.
but was there some frustration on your end as well, where people wanted to put you in this box? Well, yeah,
Oh,
that's
yes.
part of me, but so how did you kind of overcome that and say, well, they're going to do what they want to do, but this is me?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, I've experienced a lot of frustration and confusion because of the social construct. And only recently have I sensed such liberation in going, oh, right, I'm a Renaissance woman. Like I'm not ever going to do just one thing, and I never have. And feeling like you have to choose in this, like, this is what I'm going to be for the rest of my life, that feels like a death sentence to me.
Yeah,
And for some people, it might be really supportive and really not confining. It might be just what they need, but for me, it's definitely not the case. And yeah, I mean, I love that question because I would say in my 20s, as I was realizing, oh, this kind of integrative healing world of self-development and even physical modalities. I became a massage therapist and love working with people in person. That spiritual holistic healing stuff. And then it was like, oh no, am I going to do this, or am I going to follow my dreams and be a singer? And there's these big generalizations that everyone's heard, like follow your heart, follow your dreams, follow. But then they also tell you what are you going to be? Meaning, like, what is the one job you want to do for the next 50 years? And it's like nothing. There's not a single one. I don't want to be a singer full time. I don't want to be a coach full time. I don't know that I even want to be a nurse full time. I mean, one of the attractions is that it's a 3 day a week, lots of hours a day job, but I am not going to nursing school so that I can just be a nurse. I have every intention of continuing my other passions as well. Um, so it was in my 20s that I was tormented and kind of went back and forth because I thought I had to choose because of what you hear. What are you? Are you this or are you this? And if someone met me if I'm performing and they go, okay, Vanessa the singer, I'd be like, yeah. But if, let's say, something came up in conversation where someone's talking about healing, then I'd go, oh, no, 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 I'm that. No, I'm that, Or someone talks about parenthood and I'm like, oh, so into parenthood, and birthing and the birth experience and that whole thing. And it wasn't until more recently that I embraced that doesn't fit for me. I'm all of the things I'm drawn to. And even though I think there's sometimes you have to choose, like I'm going to nursing school right now and I'm not going to another school right now. I'm not doing other things too. Even if while school gears up and gets super intense, maybe for a year and a half I'm not coaching so much, or a year and a half I'm not performing so much. I know now that is just a temporary thing. The way everything is ebbing and flowing, and little more of this, little less of this, little more of this, little less of this. I now see it as like a giant ocean of I get to have, and I believe this is the case for everyone, we get to have the things we're really called to do, the things we feel we're meant here to do, the things we want to do. It just might be a little more at this time, a little less at this time. So, to answer your question, yes, there was much confusion, much frustration, and feeling, being conditioned to think that we have to see ourselves the way society and culture tells us we need to, or the way that other people go, oh, you're the this, like you said, you're the baseball coach. It's It's like, well, yeah, I am a baseball coach when I'm coaching baseball, and I'm a mom when I'm momming, and I'm a gardener when I garden like 10 minutes a year, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, now I just feel much more fluid and flowy and like I've given myself permission to do
Yeah.
all the things I want to do.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think it is one of the things that, society just drives into you that again, the minute you are done with high school, like at that moment, you're supposed to know what you want to do for the rest of your life, which
Yeah,
is just so crazy. It's such a
crazy.
crazy concept.
And to
Uh,
make you think that you failed if you don't, or if you change career that it doesn't fit society's path for you. Well, we get to figure it out and create it for ourselves.
yeah. Yeah. And I love the fact that you're going back to school now. Because again, that's something that my mom did, later in
Mm.
her life. She went back to school in her late 40s, become a drug and alcohol therapist, counselor.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, she didn't let the fact that, you know, she was something else for all these years, but this is what she was going to do now, and ended up being, very successful in it as well. And even myself, I mean, I went to a trade school to become a recording engineer. I thought I was going to be a record producer or a live sound engineer at one point, and then life just took a different direction. And I liked what you said about the ocean, because sometimes I get frustrated because between my podcasting and my blogging and writing, working on my third book right now, there's times like right now I've really
Wow.
dug into podcasting. I've been doing several interviews a week, but yet I haven't been doing a whole lot of writing. And there's times where I beat myself up as to like, why aren't I writing? Why aren't I writing? Without really understanding that it doesn't always have to be
Right.
balanced. It can ebb and flow. So that
Well,
honestly
and
just
it
helped me a lot.
balances. I mean, that's awesome because here's the thing, it balance out. It's not that every single day is looks exactly the same. I mean, personally, I wouldn't that wouldn't be very exciting for me. So, I'm writing a book right now too, and in the last 2 weeks, I've put almost nothing into it. Like I just haven't gotten to it as much. And instead, and I used to do this, instead of beating myself up or that kind of like, I need to do this. It's like, no, maybe next week is a week where I focus a little more on that. Or maybe it comes here, maybe it comes there. And the idea of balance, sometimes we have to step farther away from it and look at the 2 months and go, oh, okay, these 2 months balanced out, you know, instead of like every single day, and that's the other thing we really do get to kind of create,
Yeah. Yeah. And that
what does
is
that
true.
balance look like?
Yeah. That's
I
very
love
true.
what you said about when you were sharing about your mom also. That's so cool. And we evolve. We're evolving our whole life, ideally. I think that's what the healthy state is, an evolution, is that we're growing, we're learning, we're refining, we're changing. So it seems natural to me that, of course, in my, like, I'm mid 40s, it's like when I told my parents, especially my mom, I said, I'm going to go back to school to be a nurse. And her idea, and bless her, was, oh, too bad you didn't figure this out earlier. Like going to nursing now. It's like, why couldn't you have done this in your 20s? And it's like, because that's not the way it was supposed to go, because I was doing other things, that like the idea that you're like, if your mom should have done this earlier, that like she got to it too late, or that I'm getting to nursing too late, is such a certain way to look at it that's not necessarily accurate. Where I didn't want to be a nurse until now. I didn't want to. I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't into it. My evolution, it was perfect for me that I was doing what I was doing, which led me to now want to be a nurse. So the idea that we're supposed to do things at certain times, I mean, sometimes that might not be serving us.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready, or wasn't the thing for me. And I'm assuming, for your mother as well, like when she went, that was the time for her to go. And it would have been different if she did it earlier.
Yeah. It really is all about just trusting the timing and trusting the process. And I think we we really need to kind of rethink, as a society, career paths in general, because you can shift. And there's such, and even I, I fell into it, and not that I regret any of the 30 years that I spent, working with youth. It was incredible work that I was doing. But even that, like, if you would have talked to me in 2018, I would have never told you that selling all of our stuff and, leaving the area that we've, poured our life into for, our entire lives, to go travel and, do more writing and more speaking and, blogging and all that sort of stuff, was going to, be my path. Like, I just figured, I was going to die, you know, doing what I was doing, and it was really kind of a spiritual awakening where, listening to a voice saying, look, there's more. You did enough here. Now there's more, and you can reach a different set of people, through your speaking and your blogging and your, authoring more books and that sort of stuff than what you did here. So it's time to move on. So it was tough for me to really accept at first. And, there've been many times where, Sandy and I kind of in jest would say to people, the only regret we have, is that we didn't do this earlier, because we found it so wonderful. But the truth is, we did it exactly when we were supposed to do it. It was the perfect timing. And again, you just got to trust that process. And even now, as I'm kind of digging in and doing so many podcasts right now and not writing as much, it's something that I'm able to do because we're not moving right now. We're still in Pennsylvania. We're taking care of some family things. Um, and podcasting on the road has some challenges.
I can
You got to
imagine.
make sure you
Yeah.
got a good internet connection, make sure you're at a good spot. So it makes perfect sense for me to kind of dig in and get out in front of podcasting, and have episodes, that are scheduled to come out, several weeks after the recording, sort of thing. So, when you, like you said, when you step back, you do kind of understand. It's just while you're in the moment, sometimes it's tough to really, accept it, but you just really have to trust that whole process, that everything is happening literally just the way it's supposed to happen.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about motherhood. The name of the podcast is Journey My Mother's Son. Obviously, my mom
Hmm.
was a huge influence on me. It's part of why we're doing what we're doing. She, you know, prior to going back to school, she took several years where she traveled full time in an old 1967 Plymouth Valiant, took the back seat out of it, put a sheet of plywood in there and a
Oh,
mattress, and just
great.
cruised around. And again, I never thought
What a
that
lady. I That's so cool.
he was a special person for sure. But again, I love telling her story. I love telling people about what she did and how she did it. But I never thought that would be my story. I always thought that was her story. So just
Mm.
you've mentioned it a couple times how much you know being a parent and motherhood means to you, and I think you know there's definitely differences between paternally how we look at things and maternally how we look at things. So tell me a little bit about why you were able to embrace uh, motherhood as much as you have.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I remember being in kindergarten, and I think a lot of kids do this, particularly girls. Like, there's baby dolls, and I think there is some kind of innate, for not for everyone, but certainly for some, um little girls want a mom, and they want to be like their mom, and they see their mom momming them. But I remember, having this experience, and I don't have a lot of young memories, but I do remember kind of being in the sandbox area at my school. And I don't know the exact thoughts, but I remember it feeling profound, even though I didn't know that word at that time. It felt like the idea that I would really get to be a mom felt overwhelmingly like I couldn't imagine something better. And it was a different feeling than like Toys R Us or Christmas or like a kind of a high that's a little more superficial, or like a like a drug high. I mean, again, I was 5, so I didn't know this, but I know it now. um it felt more like in awe of the fact that I could be a mom someday, which is a big feeling for a little kid.
Yeah.
It felt like I was serious about wanting to be a mom. And it never really went away. And I did go through the phase of like Barbies and Cabbage Patch Kids and, brushing their hair. And it was that kind of, dressing them, that kind of momming, which, any real parent knows that that's a very small part, if at all, of like actual parenting, I think. But to answer your question, it felt innate. I felt like I came in wanting to be a mom. And that's not saying that that's the right way. That's just the way it was for me. I don't think everyone needs to be a parent or should be a parent. It's not a should thing. It was a very deep personal thing for me. And when I got older, when I was like a teenager, and I had obviously different ideas about it, even the ideas of what's it going to be like to hold my baby in my body? What's it going to be like to form a baby? What's it going to be like to I just was already in. Like I just was completely sold, and I wanted it more than anything. And I was multi-passionate and too. So I had my list of like I want to sing, I want this, I want that. I had all of that too, but I think at the top of the list was always I want to have a baby. More than a husband, more than a was that. And when it was time for me, and I was married at the time. I was 32, I think, when I got pregnant. And I just felt like everything aligned, and I was so grateful. And in fact, the day that I took my pregnancy test and found out I was pregnant, my husband then, we're divorced now, was at work. He's a sound engineer and a recording producer. And I took my pregnancy test, saw I was pregnant, went to my room and started recording a song, because at that time in my life I was very, very creative, and I had all the recording stuff set up so I could just go straight in, pick up the guitar, the mic was all set up, and I started singing a song about I was like crying through it, and it's one of those home recordings that is special and I'll keep it forever, but it's not for the public. But I'm kind of crying through it and singing about I can't believe this day has come. I'm so blessed. And I start singing her name in it. Her name is Violet. And of course, I didn't know if I was having a girl. I didn't know. And that name came through my mouth. I started singing her name. And yes, her father and I had discussed that once. So it's not like I didn't go through like this channeling and this voice comes through me. It wasn't like that mystical. But and then I did have a girl. We named her Violet. And anyway, I know that was a little bit of a tangent, but my connection to motherhood, my pregnancy, I was blessed to have a great pregnancy. The birth was uncomplicated and went well. And I know not everyone has that story to tell. And I just feel, and doesn't mean it's been easy to be a mom. I've have regrets. I have things that I would have done differently, like all kinds of stuff, big time. But I felt like I came in wanting a child and being blessed with this one child, and she's the perfect child for me. She's not perfect, but she's perfect for me, and I'm not perfect, and I'm perfect for her. And there's not a thing in my life that I rather succeed at. So though I want a successful business, though I want to be healthy, though I want, I like being good. I prefer to be good at the things I do. Thing that matters the most is that I'm a good mom to her. And I'm very clear about that. And that is what I have guiding my parenting most of the time. And again, totally not perfect, obviously, but she's such a joy. Like she's just, and again, like, it's difficult sometimes. I'm a single mom now. I broke up with her father at when she was 1. We have a co-parenting relationship, so he's in her life. So a lot of imperfect things, or unideal, or whatever you want to call them. Um, but yeah, my relationship with her is just at the forefront of what's important to me, and it always has been. Um, so yeah, that's just how I relate to it and connect to it. And even now that she's like a preteen and we have new challenges, I remind myself, like, this is what I'm here to do. Her knowing that she's loved unconditionally. There's conditions, we had, like, there's conditions and rules in our house, but the love is unconditional, and really giving her that super solid foundation of her worth, which I believe is also unconditional. There's nothing she can do that would make her unworthy or unlovable. Um, and having her just feel good and grateful and happy in her life is what I want for her. And I believe that that's pretty much what she has. And it feels successful. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I love the fact you said that, you're not perfect and she's not perfect, but you're perfect for her and she's perfect for you. And I think that's one of the things that, as human beings, we have difficulty embracing, because we do think that we're supposed to be perfect. And that's just an impossible standard to try to set for ourselves, because
Right. It's a
we're
setup.
all
It's a
flawed. Yeah.
total setup.
Yeah. We're all flawed. We're all broken. We're all messy. And I think when we
Totally messy.
understand that we're all perfectly imperfect is when we can really kind of, thrive in life.
Exactly. And knowing, like, in my imperfection and in the mistakes that I made or the things that I would do differently, in my own personal life, but in my parenting life and in my probably every single aspect of my life, really getting, like, it doesn't our mistakes don't make us less valuable. Our mistakes have consequences, and sometimes those are really dire, you know, but there's a difference between you're imperfect versus, like, there's something wrong with you. You're not good enough. You're unlovable. You're being going to be rejected. Like, really, really getting that, so that we do have, like you said, that foundation to then thrive.
Yeah. 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 It's so important. I mean, just so important. So what was it that led you to coaching, and that story there? 'Cause that's a lot of what you talked about when we are doing that event together with Wendy.
Yeah. And I loved that event. I loved your whole thing and your share and your story and everything, by the way. Um, well, I think that, coaching for me stemmed from my lifelong passion for self-development and spirituality. Coaching feels like an external professional version of what I do personally, which is like a self-love practice and a self-growth practice. When I first heard the term life coach, I think I was in my mid 20s, so 20 years ago. And I remember going, is that a real thing? Like, really? Like, um, that's a job, And I know some people are still like, no, that's not a job. Or like, is that a job? Is that a thing? But when I first heard it, I lit up. I got really excited. And it felt like, even before, and I heard about it years before I actually went and got training and got a few certifications. It felt like that was already the path I was on with myself, and in certain ways I was doing massage therapy at the time, and so it felt natural. Every time I say supernatural, it sounds like supernatural. Like, it felt very natural. um, and I'd done, like, the landmark courses and personal development, and I just eat that stuff up. I just find it a source again and again of self-healing. And particularly, another part of my life, particularly in my 20s, that I did share in that talk was when I wasn't doing, my passions and all of this stuff, I was really self-destructing. I was really dealing with massive depression, sometimes not so much, but then sometimes to the point of fantasizing of hurting myself, sometimes playing with hurting myself. I was in varying degrees of destructive and abusive relationships. Um, Abusing myself in various different ways. A lot of the focus was food, body image, eating disorder. So, I felt like half my life I was falling apart. And then the other half of my life, I was putting myself back together, which is exhausting, you know? And at that time, they were pretty much just evening out, I spend several hours a day meditating and healing and reading and journaling and doing music, and then several hours a day obsessing and, dating a wrong guy and hurting myself. And, so that's really what I did for so many years. And uh, the main focus, and I think a lot of this happens familially, and some of it happens because of media, and we're so conditioned, women in particular, and of course men suffer from this as well. But body image, looks, wanting to be lovable, of course, as we all want to be lovable, and feeling like that's dependent on how I look. And I thought, one simple way to phrase it is like, I have this insatiable hunger, an insatiable need to be comforted, which I was using food for. But I also felt like, but if I have too much, I won't be lovable because I'll be overweight and fat and won't feel good enough. Again, this is all not real. This is all like conditioned bullshit that's made up. But I was in this hell for so long. And when I started my slow, long journey after I really bottomed out, and there were a few bottoms, but at my bottom, I was not functioning. I dropped out of my fancy private college. I stopped massaging. I wasn't well enough anymore. Like the self-destruction and the kind of negative side had become too prevalent in my life for me to maintain that balance anymore of like I'm functioning and good. It was like I'm not well. And I checked myself into the psych ward, which was, for me personally, that was one of the best things, if not the best thing I could have done. That may have saved my life because I just wasn't sure how far down I was going to go. And so that kind of brave, bold, vulnerable, totally scared, reaching out for help, and stopped everything else in my life to focus on my wellness. And that was almost 20 years ago. And slowly working my way out of that, trying many different things, but always the path of love. And like, what does love look like? And again, talk about not perfect, the healing path is messy. The healing path, like I didn't just wake up one day and go, okay, I love myself, I'm enlightened now, everything's fine. Like, not at all. That is not how it works. I mean, if it does for someone, that's great. That's certainly not how it's ever worked for me. So when I tell people it was like a slow up and down, going back to the idea of waves, it's like, yeah, okay, several great days and then, oh, dipped back into bulimia, several great days and then dipped back into, it was that for a long time. But through all of that, and I used my trainings, but really I just went there myself. I went so deep and so far. And at this point, almost 20 years later, I say like it was a serious path of self-love and recovery, or whatever you want to call it. And eventually to a place where it's like, wow, I don't have any issues with drugs or alcohol. I don't have bulimia anymore. I don't have actually am in a place where I have a relationship with food and my body, um, not from an external superficial place at all, but from a place of gratitude, joy, peace, sanity, you know? Um, and again, even that's not perfect. I don't eat perfectly. I don't look perfectly. I don't think perfect thoughts all the time, but I am nowhere near where I was, nearly 18 years ago. And so that progression led me to really focusing my I went to two coaching schools that were both pretty rigorous, like really good programs, and started offering that to other people. And part of the way that I teach and coach is through a completely transparent, self-exposing, like, here's my stuff. Here's what I've gone through. Here's what I'm still going through. Here's what I didn't do perfectly the other night. And here's how I cope with it. And here's how I love myself. And here's the tools I use. Now let's help you in your own wisdom and your own divinity find your place that feels great and sane and peaceful and happy. And so that's like my path with coaching. And most of my coaching focuses on the embodiment part, the being in your body. A lot of people want to lose weight. I'm not necessarily, and I'm trying to make this very clear, I'm not really a proponent of weight loss or not weight loss. It's not actually about that at all to me anymore. Um, but a lot of people who want to lose weight, who think that weight is their problem and that's what they want changed, I kind of get them interested, honestly, by saying there is a way for some people who, if you're abusing food, if you're abusing yourself by not giving yourself positive self-regard, by not respecting yourself, by not knowing how to take care of yourself or love yourself, um, there are ways to do it which are completely loving, completely sane, um, where when you do those things and you learn to take care of yourself that way, you do lose weight naturally. And that is what happens for me. I lost 40 pounds, not overnight, no dieting, nothing, the opposite of crazy. My body was given the chance to rebalance. My relationship with food was given the chance to rebalance. And that's what I offer to people is, let's do that deep work. Let's go in. Let's love you. All of it. Even the stuff that you wish wasn't there, or whatever. Let's learn to be with that with presence and power in a way that it's natural for your body and your life and everything to transform. Um, and that's one of the main things that I do now. Um, is coach in that way, where it's really about transformation, inner transformation that leads to outer transformation.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's so important, again, and this has kind of just been woven throughout our conversation is, our acceptance of, the fact that we are imperfect and we are messy, but it's okay. It's okay. So what, as you went through that yourself, obviously there was something that clicked that, made you want to get involved in coaching that was like, look, I want to give back, because coaching really is giving back. So, there's some people, they kind of go through that journey, but then that's it. And it's just,
Mm.
more them. So what was it with you that was like, what, I want to help others who are going through, similar things as to what I went through? Because, in my opinion, there's always kind of safety in numbers, and you always, when you're going through that, to be able to reach out to someone who has a similar story is very important. So what was it that resonated with you that wanted to give back to others that were going through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I'm glad you asked that because I don't know that I've ever really thought of it so consciously before. Um, I think it feels natural for me. Um, it feels like, why wouldn't I? You know, and I'm not saying everyone should, um, but I think it's, I think, you know, in a, in quotes, selfish way, it's even more of my healing.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a way that we take the, whatever you want to think of it as, like the sludge, the mistakes, the dark stuff, the shameful stuff, the stuff we regret, and lift it up and make it gold. You know, give it away, give it up. Like the idea of alchemy, you know, of like literally turning something that's, you know, valueless or undesirable into something so valuable. Like if I didn't share, then it would just be my little secret and my little, you know, not that little as in diminishing it, but obviously little as in not as big an impact, little as in it's not having a ripple effect. And I think, you know, what kind of motivates me is that I didn't feel like there was a way out. I felt trapped. I felt so bad. And because I felt bad, it would, you know, keep cycling and kind of keep the pattern going. I know that's the case for anyone suffering with whatever they're suffering with. It's like we have this shame that keeps it in place. And the more I embraced, I don't have to be ashamed. I can admit there's things I did that I wish I didn't do, but the whole thing is I would never do that now. So I got the lesson. So I learned. And we come here to do that. So we're, I feel I'm meant to have suffered like that and have gone through that because I'm meant to help other people now. That's where it turns all beautiful. That's where the pain turns into something higher. Like the whole thing is alchemized. So now, I mean, honestly, if someone said to me, well, we could erase, you know, if God says, well, I can erase that even happened, I wouldn't. I'm really glad I'm out of it. And certainly if I was still in it, I'd say, yes, please erase. Do it again. But now that I'm out of it, it's like, well, no, there's all this personal gain of my own character, my own self-respect, my own forgiveness, my own growth. But we're meant to alleviate other people's suffering, help them alleviate their own suffering, really, um, by sharing this. And so much good, including yours. I mean, I know you're a drug and alcohol counselor, and your mom's right. Oh, sorry, you worked with youth. Your mom's a drug and alcohol counselor. I mean, what a beautiful world and a beautiful place when we take what used to hurt us, how we either used to harm ourselves or someone else, or, you know, and turn that into like a bouquet of flowers that we spread out in the world. And in a way, you know, the work that I do has become exactly what I needed, you know, when I was suffering. This is exactly what I needed. So I became my own solution. And I know it's a solution or an option for other people, and to inspire others like, hey, wherever you are, whether you're ODing on heroin, whether you're being abused or you're abusing someone, whether you have an eating disorder, whatever it is, you can get out of this. There is a way. You know, there is a light for you. You know, and most of us know that because we actually were there. You know, my life wasn't ruined or wasted because I've done things I've done, you know, nor was anyone's. And we can always turn it around. And by showing that and sharing that, my hope is that it alleviates some of that suffering, some of that darkness, some of that despair, some of that shame that people have, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so true. And I think that really is why we're here. You know, we're here to help each other. We're here to, pass on lessons that, that we've learned to others. And, the fact is, you know, we're probably not going to keep those who are trying to help from getting hurt on their own, because there's so we can only help them so much, where they've got to go through their own trials and tribulations as well to
Absolutely.
learn their own lessons. But I think if we can help ease that a little bit, is really one of the things that you know keeps us moving forward as a society, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like you said, you can't do it for anyone, but you can open a door and say, "Hey, there's this way if you want to try it out. There's this option." It's just an option. It's just like shining a light, in a dark room. Like, well, there is this light. Everyone is still gonna do whatever they choose to do, and that's their free will.
I love that. Love that. Want to shift gears a little bit again, just because being a singer and a musician, I always love, obviously I'm not a musician. I did play bass a little bit while I was in high school, but was not nearly intent enough about it to keep it up. So I later gave my bass guitar to my nephew, who has done wonders
Mhm.
with it. I'll still dabble in harmonica
Oh, that's great.
occasionally here and there, but always love to talk music, because I think music is definitely one of those international languages, for sure, and can break down anything that you're
Absolutely.
going through. So tell me a little bit about um, what got you into singing. And you said you play guitar. I don't know if there's any other instruments you play, but you know what was it that I guess, for lack of a better term, made you fall in love with music?
Yeah. Um so music also started young for me. Um and has been kind of a lifelong, to differing degrees, has been a lifelong part of kind of what I do, how I kind of identify and relate in my life. Um I don't know if it started, I don't know exactly how it started. Again, it started young, and I think I just enjoyed it, and I don't know that I was any good, like good at that point, but it was like I just felt natural kind of performing, like even, on standing on my school bench at, like in elementary school, and like singing Madonna, and was really enraptured when I'd see things. It was pop stars for me at that time, but seeing things on TV and hearing a song over and over, or hearing even a melody at the end of a movie. Maybe there was no singing, but it was just the melody line played by another instrument, and just feeling that emotional connection of, this speaks to me. So just really having a resonance with music, and repeating it over and over in my head, and going to my room and singing it. And when I would have, big emotions, normally, like, I would go and start writing a song about it, and singing into like a little tape recorder that I I would have and carry around. Um and I think one piece of it, because I know that there was a time that, there was some trauma and I wasn't getting my needs met. And, you know, part of it I think was attention seeking, which I don't feel like was that positive necessarily for me. But part of it was, I'm just alone in my room doing my thing, loving humming and singing. And as that developed, and it was kind of always there in my life, I was in choir for 18 years and started a band at 18. And um, it was just been this lifelong journey. And I think my favorite aspect of it, besides of really loving performing, really, really loving that most of the time, um, is the very private, just me processing, like getting an inspiration or processing feelings. And I mean, I wrote a ton of songs during, the 15 years of self-destruction. I probably wrote, and I'm not kidding, like about 300 songs. Not all good, but like me having this little recording set up in my room, and going there and knowing a few instruments enough to support myself in writing a song and singing a song and processing, and having that like healing tool, like that really healing, connecting. It felt spiritual. I felt connected, and this safe place to emote my feelings, a safe place to process whatever was going on. So for me, it was really a healing tool, a creative tool, a way of communing with myself, and what sometimes felt like a higher influence, like that kind of creative process that can happen with people when you feel like you're collaborating or something's just coming in, it's just flowing, that bliss of being in that flow. That's a lot of what my music life had been. And I did dabble in different genres. I went to my degree is in music. I went to Mills College in Oakland, California, and studied music. And I did pick the school that was probably the most experimental, avant-garde, creative. I mean, I still had to do music theory and some of that, but you're basically allowed to just go be a weirdo and express yourself. Like, the whole idea of what music is and what music isn't, or what's good and what's bad, is a very blurry line there. And I really liked that freedom. So that's, a lot of my path in music. And now, as of more recently, really redefining and again, kind of going back to parts of our conversation where we've talked about how we evolve and how we change and how we kind of either pick a new career or blend into, like, selling all your stuff, and now I'm going to travel in a van, and this is what I'm doing, or travel in a mobile home, or I feel like in my musical life, what feels authentic for me and is really going into more of an explorative, not so much song structure, not so much genre music, as much as like improvisation and something that might be considered more experimental, like sound healing. I do crystal bowls, play the bass, I like bells. I do a lot of mostly vocal stuff using a looping pedal, where I make like sometimes 10 tracks of myself singing and harmonizing, and looping it. And I also do use an effects pad. So sometimes I can, like, I'll sing into something, but change it to the point that it's like, you don't know that that's a voice because of the effects I put on it. So really starting to explore and play more with, sounds like a soundscape. And it still, for me, is very much about that emotional, emoting what feels true for me, but sometimes without words, it's more just about the pureness of the sound. And so really going into that realm with my music right now.
Yeah, I love that. What do they say? Three chords and the truth, and you can have a pretty good song, right?
Yeah.
So,
I love it.
is there any? I mean, we've covered so much, but is there anything
Yeah.
that we missed that you would like to let the listeners in on?
I guess, there's not something that I had planned at all. We did cover a lot, but I just really, I guess the messages that were echoed in our conversation, which is like, really being creative and free in your life to find your own path and let that grow and evolve as is natural, you know? Um, I loved that we talked about not having to do one thing your whole life or having to fit in a box. And even in that realm, like just looking at music, not fitting in a box and letting it just kind of grow. And also just letting all the listeners know that, whatever it is you've gone through or are currently going through, that I don't believe there's a single thing that could make you unlovable or unworthy or not good enough, you know? And so to really, my path of healing, and I've healed a lot of things and I'm sure I'll heal a lot more, um, really is that foundation of, I deserve to remember my wholeness. I deserve to heal, and I deserve to be happy. And so does everyone. Um, yeah, that's my message to people.
I love that. Vanessa, how do people find you if they want to reach out and engage in any of your coaching, or if they're going through a battle with, weight
Yeah.
loss, or, learning to love their body just the way it is? How can they find you on the internet?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. So it's Vanessa Rae, R-A-E. You can find me at Vanessa Rae of Light. That's OFLIGHE. I'm in the middle right now of changing websites, so it is going to turn to the Divine Body Align. But as far as on the social medias, like on Facebook, you can find me at Vanessa Rae of Light. I have a YouTube channel where I give a lot of free content, talks. I have my own show, The Divine Body Line. I give meditations, interviews, all related to, aligning to your divinity in your body. So again, that's the Divine Body Align. And yeah, so YouTube station, the Divine Body Align show. I can put, I don't know if this is helpful, but I can put a thing of links in the chat.
Yeah, I can put the links in the show notes for sure for you. Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
Great. And I do give free consultations. If someone wants to chat about anything I've talked about, you can find me. There'll be a link here in the chat for a free consultation. So yeah, my show. I'm on Instagram, on Facebook, Vanessa Rae of Light.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, that brings us to our final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things, then the whole world changes. So it's one of the little things that Vanessa does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place.
I love that so much. I meditate daily, and in my meditation / prayer, I have moments where I sit there and I think of what I call the divine, God, goddess, what have you. And my wish is for the whole world to have peace and happiness. And it's interesting because when I wish for that, I instantly have peace and happiness. So it is this self-fulfilling, giving and receiving is the same thing. I think an individual joy, an individual light adds to the light of the whole world. So yeah, I wish and pray on peace and happiness for the entire world every day.
And it truly does start with us, so if we can be peaceful and happy, then others can as well. And like you said, shining the light. If one of us shines our light, and then 2 of us do, and 3 of us do, and then 30 of us, thousands of us, it absolutely lights the world. So
it lights the world, absolutely.
So folks out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com or danclouser.com. While you're there, pick up a copy of my most recent book, The Journey of My Mother's Son, Volume 1. Vanessa, again, I really appreciate you being on the show. This is a great conversation.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure. This is a great show, and you're a great host.